Hello students, your teacher, and today we are going to talk about ordering numbers. And there's some overlap in this video with comparing numbers. We're going to talk about place value. We're going to talk about converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. And we're also going to talk about integers. So first, let's go ahead and talk about ordering numbers. There's two types of ways to order numbers well, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of ways to order numbers, but the two most common, least to greatest or greatest to least. So if you're ordering numbers from least to greatest, you start with the smallest numbers, and then they get larger as you go. Okay, and then starting with greatest to least, the largest numbers first, and then going on to the smaller numbers. All right, so there's two main ways to do this. Now let's go look at the different types. There are 4 types, and this one I want to look at with you are decimals. So we have 1.101, 0.11, 1.10, and 0.01. Now, this goes back to our place values. And if you know the place values, then that's all we're comparing here, okay? Now, very quickly, I can tell you that there are some numbers in this set here, if you want to call it that don't have a 1 in front. So that makes it pretty easy to tell that the two larger numbers are 1.101 and 1.10. All right, but again, we're going to stick to the place values. So just a quick review of place values. Let's say we've got 1, 2, 3, and we've got 3, 2, 1. All right, this would be hundreds. This would be thousands. This would be ones. All right, now the other side, decimals. Remember, these all end in THS. So this would be tenths. This would be hundredths. And this would be thousandths. There is not a ones place value on the decimal side. So it just goes straight to tens, but then it counts up from there. So tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, billions, and so on. All right, so when we're comparing decimals, we're comparing the place values. All right, starting with the largest number on the left. So if we're listing these numbers least to greatest, then I'm going to start with the smallest place value. So let me look. I can tell that this one, well, these two we already said have a 1 in front. So that's not going to be right. So we have 0.11 and 0.01. And I noticed that 0.01 doesn't have anything in the tenths place value. So I know that has got to be the smallest number. And I'm going to mark that out. Let me go ahead and unmark out the other two really quick. There we go. So I'm going to use that and then mark it out. All right, now the next smallest number is going to be 0.11. Remember, that one had a 1 in the tenths place, which made it larger than 0.01. All right, now what comes next? So we have to choose between 1.101 and 1.10. And I noticed that the first number has a 1 in the tenths, and so does the second. Well, I mean, they both have a 1 in the ones, right? So now we go to the next number. They both have a 1. Now we go to the next number. They both have a 0. They're the exact same, except this one has a 1 in the thousands place. And so this one is literally 1/1000th larger than 1.10. All right, so that's least to greatest. Greatest to least is just the opposite. So we're starting with the largest number, and we've already shown that to be 1.101, then 1.10, 0.11, and the smallest 0.01. All right, so place values. Pay attention to them. Type 2, ordering large numbers. Again, place values, except now we're only dealing with whole numbers here. So on the left side of the decimal point, we have thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones. And of course, this goes on and on and on. I'm just showing you the ones that are applicable here. And so we're going to start with the first number in each. And since we're starting out least to greatest, I'm going to go with the smaller numbers. All right. So right now I'm looking at these two because they started with a 3. Now I'm going to look at the next number. That's a 4. That's a 4. They're the same. Now I'm going to look at the tens place. Tens, that's a 5. That's a 6. So since 5 is less than 6, then I know my first number is 3,456, and I'm going to mark it out. And then I know my next number already because that one was so close, and it was the only other one that was 3,000. The other two are 5,000. So that's clearly more. Now, if we're comparing the 5,000s, start with the first place value. I see that they both have a 5. Second place value, this has a 3 and this has a 6. 3 is less than 6. So I know that this is what comes next. 5,364. Mark it out. And that makes our last number to be 5,634. Again, pay attention to the place values. And then greatest to least is just the reverse order of this. 5,634, 5,364, 3,465, and 3,456. All right, type B, ordering fractions, decimals, and percents. And we're going to be using some of those skills that we learned before in converting between those three. So whenever you're comparing, the most important thing is to have them all in the same format. In my opinion, the easiest format to get these in is going to be decimal form, okay? So we're going to start by converting each of these to a decimal. Now, I know from the previous video that to convert a fraction to a decimal, all I have to do is divide because fractions are just division problems. I know that 5 goes into 1 by using my calculator 0.2 times. So this is 0.2. 21%. I remember that when I'm converting from a percent to a decimal from my other video that I just divide by 100. And I remember that all you have to do when you divide by 100 is move the decimal 2 to the left. So this is going to be 0.21. Let's see, this one's already a decimal, so I don't have to do anything. And if I divide 4 or 1 by 4 on my calculator, I get 0.25. All right, so now place values. We've already talked about them. We have the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths. So starting with the tenths, I see this first one is just 0.2, and if there's nothing after it, then that would be like 0.20. And I'm just putting that 0 there to help us compare. And so if I have a 0.20, a 0.21, and a 0.205 and a 0.25, which one is the smallest? Well, they all have 0.2, so that's all the same. Now, which one of them has the smallest next number? Well, this one, the first one, and the third one both have a 0 next. So those two are my next smallest numbers. Now, the first one doesn't have anything after the 0, which makes it another 0. So, since the other one has a 5 in the thousandths place, that makes 0.2 the smallest. And I'm going to mark that out. And since I was just comparing that with 0.205, that's what comes next. All right, so I have 0.21 and 0.25. They both have 0.2 in the tenths place. But 1 is clearly less than 5 in the hundredths place, so 0.21 or 21 hundredths comes next, and then 0.25 comes last. Greatest to least, we just switch it, starting with the largest number and then going down to the smallest. 0.25, 0.21, 0.205, and 0.2. And the last type is negative numbers. And these can be tricky. You can see, let me go ahead and put them up here. We got 2.3, negative 2.3, 3.2, and negative 3.2. And this one is tricky because the larger the negative, the smaller it is. And that gets students confused so often, right? Like if I have a number line, and let's put 0 over here, that's -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. And -5 is less than -1 because it's further away from 0. And so I think this is just something that students confuse a lot because they're so used to 5 being more than 1. Except when you think about negatives, it's different. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you're ordering numbers that are negative, the larger the negative, the smaller it is. Okay. All right. So then, obviously, if we're going least to greatest, the negatives are going to come first. So let's compare those two first. And if the larger the negative, the smaller it is, well, that's pretty easy for me to tell that negative 3.2 needs to come first. So I'm going to mark that one out. And then next, I'm going to put negative 2.3 because that's the only other negative. And I know that that is less than the other two positive numbers. Now we've got two positives to compare. Looking at the ones place value, the first one has a 2 and the second has a 3. So 2.3 comes first and 3.2 goes last. Grace Solitis is the opposite order. So the largest positive number, less positive, and then smallest negative, largest negative. I am your teacher. This is the way.